I think it's gonna have to be a blend of both, in my opinion, of like when to turn that on, when to hit that switch, and not to be the princess and the pea and be hypersensitive when something doesn't go your way. If you get 6 hours of sleep versus 8 hours of sleep, you're probably going to be fine. It's if you're chronically underslept for weeks, you have a newborn baby, for example, and you slept 3 hours every night for the last 3 weeks. Yeah, now it's going to start to actually affect you. Decrepit. Anywho, welcome back to the Iron Road podcast. Ian and Eric back again for another fun one. Eric looks menacing as usual. So let's dive right in, shall we? What's on your mind today, buddy? You psychopath.
I'm just totally gacked out of my face. Hey, well, my dog is off camera moaning because the cleaning lady's upstairs and one of them is terrified. I have a 120-pound Connie Corso, it's the ancestor or maybe the actual dog that the Romans used to conquer Europe. So it's like the most athletic Mastiff. Now he's a softie, although if you break into my house, he will kill you. But everyone is terrified of him when they see him. So I have a cleaning lady that comes over and she's mortified of the dog. And so I have to lock him in the basement because like when he's happy, he growls at you. He's like, and he starts like wagging his whole body. But most people are just terrified of that. And then it's like, oh no, he's going to kill me. And then it just spirals from there. So he's next to me being really annoying. So I'll mute my microphone between takes because he's being a real pain in the ass.
We have to splice a picture of him in post because it only does justice if you see him because he's a demon dog. He definitely looks like a terrifying hellhound.
He did save my life one time. He saved my life one time.
Okay. Yeah.
I was leaving 7-Eleven one night. I used to stop and get like a Bang energy drink for the next morning. You know, like when I used to run the gym, I would close the gym up, grab an energy drink on the way home. And so this particular area, I mean, really, I think it's a law. If you're at a 7-Eleven at night, you're going to see freaks. Doesn't matter where it is. Like it's just a law.
Magnet.
Yeah. And I go to get in my car and I take the dog with me to work all the time. So he's in the back seat of my car and it's obviously dark out. So you don't see the dog, if you don't know that he's there. And so I go in, I get the Bang energy drinks. I open the driver's side door and honestly, shame on me for having bad situational awareness. Just this deranged dude tries to open the door and get in the car behind me, which is a bad place to be.
Your back seat, you mean? Like your back seat?
That's a bad place to be. So he opens the door and he doesn't see that there's a 120-pound Mastiff in the back seat. So he opens the door and Vito just comes out of the shadows. That's his name, Vito, and just goes right after him. And the dude freaks out, understandably, slams the door shut, and then goes, "Hey man, get control of your dog." Like it was my fault. What?
Let me stab you next time.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, exactly. What? Let me get behind you with an ice pick in your car, and stab you through your seat. And I just got the hell out of there. And I, like 2 or 3 red lights down, I threw the car in park and turned around and I'm just like petting him. I'm like, I love you. And then went and like made him a steak dinner the next night. It was just like, thank you so much. Like you're the man.
That's terrifying.
But point is he's down here with me.
That's like having a turret, like a machine gun turret in your back seat. Like nobody will.
Don't give me any ideas. Okay. Don't give me any ideas. So if that was legal, I'd already have one. But there's a lot that I want to talk to you about. It's like every time I talk to you, it's like I'm just hanging out with a friend and there's so much kind of natural back and forth. But I was thinking a lot. I saw this clip. I'm just going to get right into it. A while ago of Ben Askren. Unfortunately, and this is, before he went through all of his health issues. And, I hope Ben is doing well. It's a shame what happened to him. And also a reminder that skin infections and things like that, if you're a grappler, these are no joke. You know what I mean? Even if you are a profoundly fit, strong person, a nasty bacterial infection can literally kill you within weeks if you don't get the shit checked out. So you're never too tough to go to the fucking doctor, get something looked at. And I mean, I don't know that that's exactly what happened. They say maybe a staph infection went to his lungs and his lungs had to be taken out. He had to get a transplant. Regardless, if you're a grappler or if you're just a dude who's in a dirty ass gym, if there's something funky on your skin, it could kill you. And I
Yeah.
know I've had MRSA. I've almost had to get surgery because of it. It is no joke, people. You got to take care of it. Now, with that said, he had this great point about training. And it's like he was kind of bringing two archetypes into place. And I suppose we're all somewhere in the middle between these two archetypes. And we're also somewhere in the middle, like in a different spot according to our life and our career and where we're at and everything. And so his one side was this super organized trainee, the guy who gets 8 hours of sleep, tracks his rounds. And he's talking about MMA, but I think this applies to most people. Guy that tracks his rounds, tracks his sleep, tracks his macros, has hydration under control. Everything's there. Everything's all under control. And then the other end of it is the fucking cowboy, the guy that eats a burrito, spars 12 rounds a day, smokes cigarettes, but is just game as fuck. Just doesn't care. Like something could go wrong, situation's not ideal, doesn't care. Like I'm in it, no issues whatsoever. Versus the organized guy who sometimes when those things aren't perfect gets in their head. Like, oh, my
Yeah.
sleep was shit last night. Should I tone my training down? I slept like shit before a competition. I had a tougher than usual weight cut. The weight on the scale is not where it should be after my cut. I'm 3 or 4 pounds lighter. And then they go into their workout or their competition, maybe with not the best mindset because they're so meticulous and so detail oriented and so concerned about recovery. Whereas the cowboy's just like, I'm showing up and I'm just going to fucking let it rip. I don't care. And it got me thinking about which mindset is better. Because on one hand, you want to say organized. Organized is better. Okay. But then
Yeah.
by the same token, is that every guy that I know, myself included, who is obsessed with organization, okay, with their training, I think it gets in their head when things aren't perfect, and it does. Sometimes you manifest a bad workout if you think that all these ducks are not in a row. Okay. Whereas
Yeah.
the dude who just lets it go and doesn't care, so much less of that shit gets in their head. And even though the ceiling for their physical potential might be lower due to not taking as good care of themselves, okay, they may get closer to their actual ceiling as a result of a less stressed out, I don't give a fuck mindset.
Hmm.
And I think about just my own training, like, I think I need a little bit more of the cowboy at this point in my life because I've been both, right?
Yeah.
I've been the total cowboy, both with jujitsu and the conditioning workouts around it. Just fucking go hard, punish yourself. And I was in great shape when I was doing that, but I was 20 years old. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been the psycho West Side barbell inspired power lifter. What's a deload? Go heavy. Who gives a shit,
Sure.
right? We're
Yeah.
maxing out 4 days a week, just fucking full send.
Better to
And then
burn out
I've
or fit and
been
fade away.
let's let's keep everything at 85-90% of our max. You know what I mean? We're going to technical failure today. Okay. And I missed a
Yeah.
meal. I don't know how the workout's going to go. And, I do think in athletics, in training, there's no getting around the need for just hard work. It has to be done.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes being too meticulous about details and not having that dog in you, so to speak, can really hold you back.
I think there's definitely a place for both, and I think it would benefit someone to have the best of both worlds in a sense where 80% of the time between contests, between, you know, really high intensity events, you are, let's say Jekyll and Hyde, right? So you're on one hand, you are regimented, you're disciplined, you track your sleep, track your diet, you do your training moderately to intensely. And then you have the cowboy alter ego for when you need it, when things aren't going so well and you have to get it done anyway. But the cowboys, from my experience and people that I've known like that, are very inconsistent. When they are there, they're great, but then they miss a week or two, and that that can't be your entire persona and your entire life's mantra because being a cowboy and that erratic all the time won't give you longevity. The longevity you need in martial arts, the discipline you need there, the longevity you need for just, training, weight training and powerlifting if you're going to be, pursuing some really advanced goals. So I think it's going to have to be a blend of both, in my opinion, of like when to turn that on, when to hit that switch, and not to be the princess and the pea and be hypersensitive when something doesn't go your way. If you get 6 hours of sleep versus 8 hours of sleep, you're probably going to be fine. It's if you're chronically underslept for weeks, you have a newborn baby, for example, and you slept 3 hours every night for the last 3 weeks. Yeah, now it's going to start to actually affect you. But I do think people get oversensitive about their routines and regimens. But then there's a lot of strength and efficacy to being regimented and being in a routine and taking care of your body and promoting your recovery. So, you can't be all cigarettes and no sleep and burritos. You have to, as you said, you have to have the time and place for both and know when to nail both down and you know, kick on the cowboy, so to speak.
I mean, I agree with you, and I just sometimes think when I was more towards the cowboy side, I think that I was better, but I don't have it in me to be full, for lack of a better term, full retard all the time. Like my bottom there is not low enough for me to totally let myself go. Right? It
Yeah.
almost like depends like where you start on the graph. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Okay.
not really capable of like, okay, I'm not going to sleep and I'm going to go part. That's not who I am. Like
Sure.
I'm always going to care about that. But what's interesting is even for me, my kind of I've never been someone who likes to like party to go let loose. Like, yeah, I love heavy metal concerts, but I've never been someone that goes to bars. I've always felt uncomfortable in those environments. Doesn't do it for me.
Sure.
Training was always when I could act like a complete maniac. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like that was always like that was my release. Like I'm gonna curse at people, I'm gonna talk shit, I'm gonna headbutt stuff, I'm gonna get real weird. And like we're just gonna and like the type of stuff that people go to bars to do, I always wanted to do in the gym. And I think I started to realize some time ago, like, I'm not going to be capable of having that much fun if I'm underslept and underfed
Yeah.
and everything else. But there needs to be a point where you are trying to think of the best way to put this. I think you're all right about the Jekyll and Hyde thing. You have to be able to flip that switch at the right time.
Yes.
And it's just very difficult to put on. It takes a lot of experience to be able to flip the switch for competition, but say maybe keep it off 70, 80% of the time in the off season,
Yes.
right? It's
Or
very, very hard to do that.
Rich Froning has a great quote. Rich Froning, the CrossFit, multi-time champion, I think 4 consecutive championships, absolute freakazoid of a human being, from mindset perspective, from a physicality perspective. I'm paraphrasing here, but his quote was, during training, listen to your body. On contest day, fuck what your body says. So basically that same method of like, you can't be the cowboy for 3 months straight in training because your results won't be measurable or really that good. You might overtrain and you get hurt before the contest when it actually matters. So you have to be able to reserve yourself a little bit. But I think when some people step into a martial arts studio or step on the powerlifting platform, and they're around their crew and they're like-minded people, that energy, that atmosphere, it's almost hard not to be turned up like that. Like when I train powerlifting by myself, I'm a very different person than when I was training with a crew like you and all the other freakazoid, deranged people that I was training with. So your environment does play a huge role in you being able to flip that switch. And the people, if you come into the gym and you're with me and you start headbutting my shoulder like you used to do, now I'm kind of fired up and I feed off of your energy. Sometimes when you're training alone all the time, it's hard to do that. If you're training in a commercial gym with all normal people, it's hard to like bring that freak mentality into the fold. So it's interesting. It's definitely also, it's got to be a personality trait, right? It's got to be part of who you are. Like, I don't know if I have that too much of a cowboy mentality. I'm more disciplined. I'm more regimented. Even during contests, I didn't get too psyched up. It wasn't like absolute maniacs, pacing, breathing heavy, snarling, steaming, right? So I just think that some people have that and some people don't, and you have to kind of know who you are and know what your personality and your innate characteristics are to
I
feed
think
off
I
of
might
them.
have said this to you already, but it bears repeating. when I was really in the powerlifting game, like anyone else, I went out and I bought, the West Side Barbell Book of Methods. And truthfully, like Louis' writing and communication style is very difficult to follow, right?
Yeah.
It's not like if I wanted to learn about West Side, I would probably ask people who trained there more so than I would have asked Louis. Like, I
Okay.
remember talking to Donnie about conjugate stuff, and he was able to just simplify it and make it real easy and not overcomplicated, where Louis almost, his brain is going in like a million different directions. But the reason why I bring this up was the best takeaway that I had from the book actually was him talking about the mindset of the lifter and how it's largely unchangeable. And so he was talking about like a Chuck Vogelpool being like your psycho, and then a more, mellow or laid back lifter, and how in his experience you have to just accept that. And
Okay.
you had to work with it because Chuck Vogelpool is probably not even going to want to lift weights if he can't go crazy.
Yeah.
Right? He's probably
He
like,
needs
fuck
that
this. I'm going to
part.
go do something else. Like, whatever it would be, like, who knows? Right. So,
Yeah.
and by the same token, someone who is a calm person, first of all, if they were in powerlifting back in the day, they picked the wrong sport. All right.
Yeah.
Those people probably
Yeah.
weren't around. Like, even the most mellow guy that did equipped powerlifting at the height of like the WPO is 15 times crazier than an Olympic lifter.
Yeah. I guess so.
Olympic lifters it's just such a different vibe at an Oli meet than it is a powerlifting meet. But I always thought it was interesting that Louis was like, no, you have to accept it. Like this is the mindset of the guy. He has this engine. He can't turn it off. And there's this great quote by Eric Bischoff. I know you said something interesting a few weeks ago. You were talking about you were a TNT kid. You liked WCW
Yeah.
when you were growing up, right?
Yeah.
I was more I was a WWF kid, but I always found Eric Bischoff interesting. He was the president of WCW, like on screen but also off screen, and he had this great quote: "You could teach a fast horse to slow down. You cannot teach a slow horse to speed up."
Interesting.
Apparently, I don't have horses. Apparently, that's a
Yeah.
common thing in
Yeah.
the horse owning community. You know what I mean?
Like
Like
speed trainable.
you can't teach drive and hunger and intensity, but you can temper it if someone has it to the point of where maybe it's less harmful to them for a long-term goal.
Mm.
And I have to say, in my experience training people, that's true.
Yeah.
I have never had a client that had no drive that I was able to instill drive into. But I have had clients that had psychotic drive that either through trial and error on their own or through my helping them were able to figure out when to push and when not to push.
Yeah.
Right. And I universally, man, that seems to be the situation. Like you either have that drive or you don't. And so I guess ultimately success from a mindset perspective is like, okay, you have to be the cowboy, but then you have to get it under control. Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
you just can't be. Maybe there are sports that, maybe like extreme endurance sports where like you have to just accept that pain over a very, very long period of time, and
Mm.
you can't get your adrenaline to dump too much because it'll fuck with you. Maybe that would reward to an extent less intensity, but even then to suffer that much in training because like we discussed, I've been doing a lot of reading on Tour de France training. I mean, yeah, they're not getting punched and kicked, but that has to be the most painful training ever.
Grueling.
And I
Grueling.
guess I don't know if you could do that. You have to be, I guess, somewhat laid back, but it's too hard. You have to want it, is my point. You're not just
Yeah.
gonna like do that without wanting it, you know?
Absolutely. I do think physical and mental preparation and conditioning does take into effect. Like if I start running and I haven't ran, the pain that you feel from running right away will be more pronounced because I haven't done it. So my body is deconditioned, right? And my mind won't want to tolerate the discomfort because it's not used to that type of pain. Whereas if I keep doing it, both my body and my mind will start to adjust to the stress levels of that activity. So the more I run,
Yeah.
the more I get comfortable and familiar with the sensation of running and what it's going to hurt and what's the impact and my hips are aching a little, whatever it may be. I think that the same goes true for most sports, most disciplines. You have to just you will get used to it if you keep doing it. So you have to kind of hang in there long enough to build the mental tolerance and the physical tolerance to sustain both. So like the endurance athletes, like you can't fathom how Lance Armstrong can just stay in the pocket. But again, he's so conditioned from both mentally and physically that he's built it. He's built the tolerance. Like you can't expect to go in and run a marathon if you haven't actually trained. Like you just can't expect that. You have no preparation. You have nothing going into it saying that you can do those things. So the human body and the human mind is incredible of outrageous adaptations, but you have to go through. You have to walk the road, right? The iron road. You have to walk the road to actually end at that result. You can't just teleport. So you have to kind of put in the hard work. And I do believe the mindset along the way is critical. Like your resolve, your ability to get back up and keep doing it when it's not fun, if it's boring, if it's
Oh, yeah.
painful. That's what makes you tougher, and that's what makes, like the Goggins mindset. The guy's a psychopath, but there is something to it. There's something to his mentality, and I don't recommend anyone be like him because he's just, he's an inspiration case. But, taking some of what he says and some of that mentality, and maybe you are just, pussying out, maybe you are just punking out. Sometimes you need to hear that. Sometimes you need to hear you're gonna be fine. And, like, I always find it incredible when I see 2 people dealing with the same kind of stress and one of them just crumbles and one of them perseveres. Like, is, person B just that much tougher innately, or are they accepting the burden, accepting the pain and discomfort and against the grain and, battling through anyway? It's a mindset's a mystery. Mindset really is a mystery to me.
You touched on something great there, and it's something that I've gone through recently. And I think this is something that, like as jujitsu progresses, this is going to become more normal. There's been a lot of people in jujitsu that they just like, they don't do any extra cardio or strength and conditioning. They just roll all day. Okay. Now, the truth is, yeah, if you're so athletically gifted or technically superior to your opponent, that's could be fine. But as more and more people go into the sport, there's going to be a higher skill curve. You're going to have to work on other things. And for a while, when I was focusing more on lifting, I wasn't really doing any extra cardio with the exception of my jujitsu.
Okay.
And I noticed that I was having trouble dealing with getting fatigued on the mat. Yes, because you could say that I was out of shape, but because I wasn't comfortable making decisions while I was in that much pain.
Okay.
Okay. And I decided we've had this conversation on air. Like, I have to get my conditioning better. I want to get my black belt. This is a weak point for me. And so I started really ramping up the conditioning, and I've been doing a lot of threshold training. So it's basically keeping your heart rate at anaerobic threshold, which is the highest your heart rate can go with still predominantly relying on your aerobic system before anaerobic systems come in. I personally think it's the most brutal form of training because you're going to be, say, at 165, maybe as high as 180 beats per minute, depending on the person, for extended periods of time, like 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, right at that point where the burn is coming in. And you're basically training your body to filter out that lactate or lactic acid rather much more quickly. And the first couple weeks that I was doing it, my wife was like, I was using an elliptical in my basement. My wife was like, it sounds like you're dying. And like I hadn't done it in so long, and my heart rate data wasn't even really that impressive. I was like maybe 165 beats per minute, and my legs were struggling so much to keep the power output up to get my heart rate up. And the other day, I'm up to 3 7-minute rounds. And as I'm doing it, I look down at my watch and I'm at like 171, and I wasn't in that much pain.
Hmm.
And I actually realized that when I first started doing it, I was like, when I was running during COVID, when I had nothing else to do, I would do a 20-minute warm up and then a 20-minute threshold round of running at that pace. And as I'm doing this, I'm like, how was I doing that back in the day? Like, it's so much pain. Like, am I just a bitch now? Am I getting old? Nope. A few weeks
Yeah.
later, my body acclimated, my mind acclimated to that level of discomfort, like you said. And now I notice that when I'm on the mat and I face that level of discomfort, because I have walked that road or I've kind of shook hands with the pain, so to speak, it's not overwhelming. And I do think it's interesting, your point, like if you went out today and, oh, I'm going to go for a run and you're just going to get hammered. The fatigue is going to hammer you, right?
Yes.
And you're like, wow, I can't run. I'm terrible. Maybe, but you're just not conditioned for it.
Yeah.
That's all that it is. Like it's obviously going to be overwhelming. Anytime that you do anything you've never done, it's going to be overwhelming, especially if you do it hard, right?
Yeah.
And so I totally agree with you. Like there's going to be a level of like you have to be used to it. And so yes, talking about I'm like I said, I've always been fascinated by the Tour de France because it's just I like extreme shit.
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence that I like
Clearly.
powerlifting and the Tour de France. Like I want
Yeah.
to know like fuck the middle. I don't care about the mile run. All right. I want to know like the strongest or like the most freakish endurance possible, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, sure. It's impressive that these guys do this and it's impressive that their genetics are so good, but also you're talking about guys that have been riding bikes since they're children, riding bikes competitively probably for almost about as long. They are so used to it.
So
So,
comfortable.
yeah, like if you took you or I and made us feel the level of pain that those guys feel on a hard ride, we'd break. We'd
Yes.
quit. Like,
Yes.
and it doesn't make you a bitch. It just means that you're not ready for it. Like everyone has a breaking point. That Vince Lombardi quote, fatigue makes cowards of us all. You're fucking damn right it does.
Yes.
And it's sometimes you're not necessarily a pussy, you're just not in shape. And I agree with you. You need to be told like you could do this. Just get the fuck back out there.
Yeah. I do feel like strength potential and endurance potential, there is a potential for some people not to feel the discomfort like others do. So I think I touched on it weeks ago where I would train clients and after 3 knee extension reps on a machine, they're like, "My legs are burning, I can't do it." Like they can move the weight fine, but the sensation shuts their brain down and shuts their motivation to keep going down. Then I have other people, again, not particularly strong or conditioned, they get on and either they're not connecting with their muscle enough to like reap that kind of fatigue and that sensation, but they're going 30, 50 reps. I'm like, "Are we done yet? I don't feel anything." Like some people, I do believe, have an innate mechanism where they don't feel the nerve ending sensation that the quad burning, like that visceral pain that you get. I think that's levels. And I do think some people are, in a sense, built for endurance
No
sports where they
question.
don't feel it. They don't feel it as much. So it doesn't get in their head as much. They are prepared. Yes. They are conditioned. Yes. But they also have a gift, so to speak, where they won't be so mentally affected by the nerve pain, that heat and hot sensation, that white hot sensation you get in your thighs when you're riding a bike up a hill or
Yeah.
you're in, like a spin class, for example, which was one of the worst experiences of my life, where, it's just all quad. It's all quad burn. And how do you expect to keep going? My one and only spin class. But again, so some people can feel it less than others. And I do think that plays a role in the elite, especially.
So here's an interesting anecdote for you. So, like again, Lance Armstrong podcast. When I was just coming back from Virginia Beach a couple weeks ago, I was listening to some Peter Attia clips on endurance because he's just good at making the stuff digestible for regular people. Like he could
Yes.
take the super science nerd shit and bring it down to a normal person.
Write
And
it in crayon
he
for
was
everyone.
mentioning Michael Phelps. And I really want you to think about this, and I want the audience to think about this. He was talking about how it was strongly rumored, okay, he wasn't like out and out saying that this was true, that it was strongly rumored that Michael Phelps barely produced any lactic acid during hard endurance. And so
Yeah.
like they would prick his blood and there was no hydrogen ions. How the fuck are you going to beat someone who doesn't feel the pain of genetically, it just doesn't
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, that's the only way really that you could win as many events as he did. Because if you go to a swim meet, you've got sometimes 3 minutes rest between events.
Not a
You
lot.
know? Yeah,
Not a
so
lot.
you're doing like an individual medley, then you're doing the backstroke or the butterfly. Like that's why some guys dominate in single strokes and other guys could do everything. A lot of it comes down to what can they tolerate physically. And so if your lactate is barely there after crushing it in a pool, I mean, dude, how do you compete against that? Like, even if you have a better VO2 max than he does, ultimately, he's not feeling the pain the way you are, which means he's barely digging into his mental reserve.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like he's smoking and joking, doing like an individual medley, which is one of the most exhausting things in sport, right? So like, and that's pure genetics. Like I don't say that to like detract from the guy. I mean, here's a guy that figured out what he was built for and sent it, right? And
Yes.
like
Yeah.
became the best ever. I mean, like he's a
Hands
human, he's
down.
like a dolphin. It's unbelievable. Okay. But like again, I'm sure if we had more data on these Tour de France riders, you might find, and maybe it's out there, I just haven't read it. You may find that some of them may barely produce any lactic acid.
I do
And
think
yeah,
it's
when you're
probably a
when you're
characteristic.
biking up a fucking mountain for 4.5 hours, that shit matters.
Yes.
That shit matters.
Yes.
Whereas conversely, if you take that guy and you have him do like a single day sprint race, which is originally what Lance Armstrong was. He was not a multi-day tour rider. He was a world champion single day rider. Totally
Is
different
that
body
right?
type. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
totally different
Okay.
body type. He was much more muscular, obviously rewards much more power for one day. You don't have to pace yourself over a 3-week event or something to that effect. You just get out there,
Yeah.
you fucking send it, and you go home, right?
Yeah.
Now you take someone who maybe produces more lactic acid, but they have a better VO2 max. They may beat you in that race single day, especially if the terrain is flat. It rewards more power output and less tolerance for lactic acid. But that's the level that genetics obviously plays at the top level of any sport. And that's just so difficult to overcome through hard training. I mean, you got to find what you're good at. And something I think about every day, dude. I know you do with my son, especially, is like, let's figure out what he's good at and get him there immediately. No
Yeah.
wasting time
Yeah.
doing shit you're not meant to do, because you're always going to love what you're good at, right? Because it gives you a feeling of
It's easy.
accomplishment. So for me,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, like I'm just going to have him play as many sports as possible, and whatever he's good at, we're doing it. I'm not, I don't want you dedicating 5 years just to start on your soccer team once. No, that's not what we're going to do. Like, let's figure out what you're good at and let's full send it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
It's
by the way, I want to say this. You had a great point. You were just saying this. I'm going to reward you. Well, not compliment you. Reward you. What the fuck am I talking
Thank
about?
you.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, coach.
Please,
You were
sir.
talking about your
Yeah.
mindset, and it
Yeah.
made me think, in some respects, you've never touched steroids, so like it'll be interesting when you eventually go on TRT. Like, if you were like a hyper responder, I would say that you could have been a great bodybuilder. And the reason why I say that is almost every bodybuilder, Justin Harris says this a lot, is actually not a very intense person. They're very mellow, laid back people, because fight or flight response obviously affects appetite, right? It reduces appetite, but also being in that crazy stressed out thing can actually cause your body to cannibalize muscle tissue, particularly when you're very lean, right?
Yeah.
Because you're dieting, there's not enough carbs. There's either no fat on your body, obviously, or it's just takes more steps. Breaking down fat takes more steps than breaking down muscle or carbs. And so a lot of guys who are hyper stressed out tend to be a little softer because of how jacked up and crazy they are.
Mm.
And Justin Harris's point was basically, a guy that is a really good bodybuilder can just eat chicken and rice while the world burns around him.
Yes.
That's like, oh yeah, my house is on fire. All right, I got my chicken and rice. I got my cooler. Oh, my wife just called me a retard and wants to divorce me. All right, whatever. Here's my chicken and rice. Like, there's a certain type of consistency that comes out of that, like managing stress. And I wonder if that's where like the stereotype of the dumb meathead comes from. Like, it's not that
Sounds
they're even dumb. It's just like nothing gets to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's definitely a compliment on one hand because in the realm of fitness, and pretty much only fitness, in my opinion, I can handle really boring tasks, repetitive things.
Yeah.
I can do the same thing always without, yearning for something else. Right? I can always, monotony is fine for me. But on the other hand, you have to have kind of a simple mind for it.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm a simpleton in a sense where I, like outside of my, tunnel vision, task oriented mentality, I'm not really considering the greater picture sometimes. I'm not, thinking deeply about the other variables because I just tuned in and I know this is going to work and I just follow the path and it gets me there. So yeah, maybe I had in an
Truthfully,
alternate life, I had a future as a bodybuilder, but we'll never
that's
know.
why I think you and I actually get along so well, though, because I am an intense big picture thinker.
Okay.
That's always who I've been. You know,
Yeah.
the audience at this point, they know that I'm insane. Okay. I'm a very, very intense person. And I am always thinking about how what I do affects the bigger picture. And it hurts my ability to have that tunnel vision, you know?
Okay.
And I think working with you, you're good at like keeping the tunnel vision and getting tasks done. And it reminds me to zoom in a little bit
Okay.
more, you know?
Okay.
And like, I think that that's hugely important. I mean, to use like a football analogy, not that I don't watch football at all anymore, but Bill Parcells was the coach of the New York Giants. And when he was the coach of the New York Giants, he had Bill Belichick as his defensive coordinator. And Belichick is on record saying that Parcells was a great big picture thinker and manager of egos, and he was a great motivator. Okay. And Belichick was a phenomenal small picture detail thinker.
Got it.
And that those types, they work very, very well together. You know what I mean? And
Great
truth
point.
is, we talk about Jay Cutler all the time because I would love to. That's like a bucket list thing to interview Jay Cutler. We got to get this thing big
Yeah.
enough to talk to Jay. He's a legend.
That'd be great.
But he always said when he was a bodybuilder and he did it for what, like 20 years, he lived in a box. My box is the gym and my kitchen. I
Yeah.
don't care about
Yeah.
politics. I don't care about the local school board. I don't care about professional sports. I don't care about anything. And obviously, if you look at it, Dorian Yates, the same way.
Yes.
Okay. Ronnie Coleman, the same way. Okay. So many of those guys, I think, are like that. And obviously, it helps you save your energy for what matters. But what fascinates me is how your personality actually affects like your physique or your physical output, right? Like the fact that it can actually help you like preserve muscle mass. And that's
Yes.
another strength that you have. I remember after your knees were mangled, you told me some workout that you were doing and I was like, this guy's really like, he could be a serial killer. Like, I remember having this, I was like, dude, my friend, like, there may be like a lot of dead bodies in like his crawl space. You were doing slider reverse lunges for an
And
hour,
step ups. And step
step ups
ups.
for an hour. You were just like, I push through the boredom. My knees feel like butter and I just go. And I'm like, listening to you talk, I'm like, this guy's a crazy person. Like, you told me to do an hour of step ups, I'm going to kill. I won't do it. There
It's
has to
all I
be
could do.
$1,000,000 or I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was so desperate at that point too because after my the knee tendonitis, patellar tendonitis in both knees really took over and shut me down from training and competing. I was kind of depressed for a while, and I had to take like 2 full years off of leg training just to let them calm down. It was really, a big mental mountain for me to climb. But when I found the one thing that worked, the monotony doesn't matter to me because I can finally train legs again. It was like I was coming out of a dark hole, and like that was my only sliver of light. That was only like the only glimmer of light that I had was I know I can do this. I know it doesn't cause me pain, and it seems to be that I can do any amount of it and it won't cause me pain. So let's find out how much I can actually do. And I would do 15 to 25 reps of a, let's say 24-inch box or 18-inch box step ups, switch leg, and just keep going for, you know, I would break when I had to, for my heart and lungs sake, but for 45 minutes to an hour, I'd be doing step ups only. And it kept muscle on my body, I think. And it just gave me hope. It gave me hope that if I could do this, there's something else that I can do later on. If I'm prepared enough, strong enough, I can get back to the things that I love. And lo and behold, I did.
On that same note, there's like an influencer who I really like. His name is Zach Telander or Thielander. He's got like 200,000 followers. He's a strength coach, used to be an Olympic lifter, and now got like really into running. And I like him because he's our age,
Okay.
married, kids, normal dude, calls out a lot of fitness industry bullshit. And he was talking about this study that gets thrown around a lot, or maybe not this study specifically, but things in this ilk about how like people don't want to do, basically like endurance athletes have 40% lower testosterone. And so people quote this and they're like, well, I shouldn't go running or something. And what was highlighted in the study that I thought was really interesting, first of all, it studied like extreme marathoners. We're not talking about people that run the 800 or a
Like
5K.
ultra,
Yeah, like
ultra
ultra
runners.
or marathoners themselves, whatever. Okay. But the study actually said it's entirely possible that to be a great ultra runner, you have to have low testosterone because you
Mm,
can't be an easy gainer of muscle mass and be an extreme endurance athlete,
Hmm.
right? And also, it's entirely possible that if you're doing all this extreme endurance stuff, maybe one of the reasons your body produces less T is it's like, hey, we gotta slim down. Like, it's too
Yeah.
much work to fuel this. It's not like you're becoming a bitch or something. Like, there's a reason why, I'm sure, heavy squats and deadlifts, this has all been researched, are correlated with improvements in testosterone and growth hormone, because your body's like, oh shit, there's a lot of stress coming in. We have to grow or we're going to break. Let's get this shit going. So it's not like running makes you weak or a pussy. It's more like the body, as you pointed out, is so adaptive. I mean, it's obviously, I mean, humans live in every fucking climate. Okay.
Clearly, yeah.
And even like there's definitely genetic differences between different ethnicities and races, but even within a singular race, they've lived in a million different climates. It's all adaptive. So like your body's going to recognize what's going on, and it's going to make decisions, for you about what buttons have to be pressed in order for you to survive. So, and it's a question, it's a chicken or the egg question. Like, is testosterone lower because you're running, or are you great at running because your testosterone is lower and you're less inclined to
Hmm.
grow muscle mass? There's a guy that plays in the English Premier League. I don't know his name. I think he plays for Chelsea. Like he's like an African guy, and the dude is so jacked, dude. So jacked. Doesn't lift.
Just
Doesn't lift.
naturally,
And he
bastard.
basically says, like, if I lift, I get so big that I suck at soccer. Like just one of those people that's like a total freakazoid.
Wouldn't that
So
be nice?
yeah, dude. I mean, like you think that you want to talk about like the myostatin shit we were talking about the other day?
Yeah.
Like that's one of those dudes. It's just like he gets like 29-inch legs from just like jogging. You're like, fuck you. Like you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
the same. They used to say that about Flex Wheeler, that Flex Wheeler may have had or probably did have like the myostatin inhibitor thing, like it turned off. That
Like
like
naturally.
he was one of those guys that could like just curl the 25s and just get 20-inch arms.
Yeah.
Like the level of stimuli that he needs to grow is so much less. Like that's the other thing. The amount of stimuli you need to grow is genetically predetermined. Like some people
Yep.
have to kill themselves to grow. Other people like they fucking do like side laterals and like pec deck and they look like an Adonis.
They're yeah, they're carved out of stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel like that some people are just gifted in that way, and however, besides the genetic gifts, I do feel that this I always say this to all my clients and everyone, the skill of lifting, you know, as cheesy and hokey as it sounds, the mind-muscle connection for you, your ability and bodybuilders' ability to connect and activate the muscle they're targeting w as they're training it is really a huge game changer, and whether you ever reach your genetic potential or not is a huge factor on whether you are able to learn how to do this. So a lot of my clients can do lat pull downs. Some of my clients have done lat pull downs for hundreds or thousands of reps and never feel their lats. And, sometimes it's the coach's fault not being able to get them to connect. Sometimes it's their lack of interest and they really don't, they're just trying to get the reps done. They just want to get it over with, which is sad and really missing the point in a lot of ways. They're wasting so much time. If you're going to do 1,000 reps of lat pull down over, why not kind of be good at it, right? If you're going to go golfing, you kind of want to be okay at it, right? You want to be good enough to not make an asshole out of yourself. So if you're going to commit time to the gym as a client, as a just a person who's going to be on this fitness endeavor, if you take one thing from this episode, learn how to activate, get in tune with the muscle you're targeting, and feel fatigue in that localized area. Because if you can't do that, your physique progress really will never be head turning. It'll never be eye opening. And you may have a lot of genetic potential in the tank that you never sniff, you never even scratch the surface of because you didn't put in, the coordination work, the technique work, and again, that hokey mind muscle connection work to get that done. And I think bodybuilders are experts at mind muscle connection, and they can flex a fiber without flexing anything else. They can tense a certain area and localize it without it rippling effect to being tense everywhere else. So it's a skill that cannot be overlooked. in my opinion.
Oh, I think to sell that even more, what I would tell our audience is like, look, there's two ways to see progress here, I guess, right? There's if you don't have good quality work, not efficient, then you have to do more work, right? So in order to get our biceps to grow, there's a certain amount of volume that needs to be done, and it's different for
Mm,
everyone over the course of their training career, even, right? If you're doing them loosely, not paying attention, having bad form, doing the whole like this thing where your triceps are almost parallel with the floor with the barbell curl as opposed to being way, way more strict with it, dude, it may take 10 sets to get a stimuli because your biceps are only working a little bit. Whereas if you know how to get that mind muscle connection, it might take two, you know?
yep.
And guess what?
Yeah.
The joint wear and tear is real either way. It's not like
Yes.
there's less wear and tear because you did it shitty. Like, no, like it's not only is it wear and tear, it's also time. Like,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like you're putting more time in, okay, which at some point you have to be willing to do, but you only want to have to increase volume and time when you need to. Like if you're doing so much shitty work that the only way you're overcoming it is to do a lot of work, what do? You're going to lift weights 4 hours a day? No, that's
No.
crazy. Like that's
Yeah.
that's
Just
completely
get
crazy.
better.
Yeah.
Get better.
Yeah. So
Focus.
you have to get better. And I think I always understood the mind muscle connection thing for sure, but I wish I would have focused on it a little bit more when I was powerlifting, in particular on the upper body assistance work. I think I look back on it, the biggest I ever was when Travis Mash was doing my programming, and there was a lot of repetition effort stuff. And I was so focused on just moving as much weight as possible on the bench press or bench press variations. When I look back on it, I think if my chest had just gotten bigger, not only would, of course, I have more potential to move the weight, but the other
Sure.
reason why big guys move so much weight is there's just less range of motion.
Yep.
Like
As you
having a
grow,
big
the
chest,
barrel
even if it's not
chest.
the primary mover, it doesn't matter. Like there are guys that are so thick that a floor press is a full range of motion.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's actually hard for them because there's no leg drive. So now you're floor pressing less than your bench press. Whereas a
Yeah.
skinny lifter, they may floor press more because it's fucking 10 inches off their chest. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like I wish I would have focused more on that, on the upper body assistance work in particular,
Mm.
because I realize now how much it would have helped my bench. Weirdly, I was always very good with that with lower body stuff. And I
Okay.
think the whole idea that West Side mentality was train your hamstrings, train your glutes. So I was always very in tune with, where do I feel this lower body movement? Do I feel it in my hamstrings? No, then I don't want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Do I feel it in my glutes? No, I don't want to do it. Oh, you got to get your lower back strong. Okay, I'm doing a back extension in a certain way. Am I getting a pump in my lower back? No, well, I got to fix it. Right.
Got it.
I never applied that to upper body work. And I look back on it and I'm like, that was definitely a big mistake. And like, not only did I wind up doing maybe more work than I should have, but it was lower quality work. You
Yeah.
know, where when
Yeah.
I got a little more bodybuilder with my training over the past year or two, I noticed so much growth in my chest because I'm actually picking variations and really focusing, like arching my back to get that stretch and really focusing on where I feel the chest contracting. And before I knew it, I'm looking in the mirror. I'm like, I'm seeing stuff here that I've never seen before, even when I was benching 100 pounds more.
Yeah.
So it just, I wish I would have paid more attention to that. And frankly, it probably would have beat me up a whole hell of a lot less, dude.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I do think it's difficult to do that as a pure power lifter because powerlifting, from a muscular force output standpoint, is an all hands on deck approach. Everything is involved. You're not focusing on just your hamstrings on the deadlift. You're just getting as tight as you can, and everything kicks in that as the team to make your bones move and make that weight move. Whereas bodybuilding is the opposite. It's you're really now localizing the fatigue. You're targeting one muscle group. You're trying to not fatigue the other muscle groups so much and not involve them. It's two very different disciplines. It's like a golfer trying to work on their swing and then play tennis right away. In between their golf practice, you have to be very very good at both. And I think as powerlifting goes on, we're seeing all the outliers are extremely heavily muscled and they're looking like bodybuilders and they are packing so much tissue onto their frame, whereas the old fat powerlifter thing is kind of being phased out. I mean, besides super heavyweights, if you're not a super heavyweight, you shouldn't really be fat anymore because these guys, like Colton, for example, they're so lean and so heavily muscled, and they've maxed their frame out with muscle tissue, which is that wide base to grow a taller strength tower, potential for strength. So if you can't be good at both, you're not going to be elite anymore. You need
I agree.
unless you're a levered freak, you just have the leverages for it, and you're gifted that way, and you have some drives and drugs. But I just feel like you have to now become a multidisciplinary athlete if you're going to be really, really good at powerlifting or any strength sport for that matter, because of again the requirement for the all hands on deck approach, and then your development needs to build that wider base for your, raising your potential, your ceiling of potential.
And dude, even if you're a lever freak, you'll only be good at that one lift.
Yeah.
Because at the end
Yeah.
of the day,
Well,
if
true.
you're a deadlift lever freak, you're not a bench lever freak. You're just not, right? Generally
True.
speaking, okay.
True.
So like you still, it's like okay, yeah, you'll have like a circus freak deadlift where the bar moves 2 inches. Like there's like that old powerlifter from like the 60s or 70s. It was like this black dude that had scoliosis and long arms, and he would just like pull sumo, and the bar moved 2 inches. And everyone like, oh, he's the strongest guy in the world. And it's like, dude, he probably can't pull 405 conventional. Like, what are we even
Yeah.
talking about? Like,
Yeah.
this is ridiculous. But to your point, it's funny you think about the focus of powerlifting training. Again, I actually saw Justin Harris talking about this. So there are several ways you could say to appear bigger to build mass. Obviously, you have like this has been spoken about ad nauseum, but you have your myofibrillar hypertrophy, like the actual growth of the fibers themselves that usually comes from heavy strength training, progressive overload. But you do have sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, which is that comes from more of the pump work. Generally, the sarcoplasmic oriented bodybuilders, you'll see them shrink more when they're done training because the
Okay.
adaptation is more about fluid in the cell or the swelling of the cell than it is about the actual growing of the fiber itself. And
Interesting.
and to your point now, I think powerlifters are getting so heavily muscled, they're spending so much time, I think, in that 5 to 8 rep range, just building that. I think that's where that dense look comes from. Like,
Okay.
for example, you look at like Phil Heath, amazing physique, but he almost looks like he's made of clouds.
Yeah.
You
Very
know,
rounded. Very
yeah,
rounded.
very
Yeah.
round. That I'm not saying that he I know he trained hard, but that is kind of like a sarcoplasm freak type guy,
Mm.
right? Flex Wheeler was like that, where like Ronnie Coleman was just a dense muscle tissue.
Yeah.
Like, that was Dorian Yates. Both of those guys trained like very, very heavy. And I think what's interesting is those guys seem to lose a lot less mass when they stop lifting like that. Because that
Interesting.
that shit is here to stay. You don't have to pump fluid into it. It's like you get that dense muscle. Of course, if you don't train as much or at all, or you obviously come off drugs or whatever. But you look at Dorian Yates nowadays, and like he's probably still like 230 pounds,
Yeah.
and he's like 5'10. He barely lifts, and he's lean.
Yeah.
He's still got
Yeah.
abs. And that's just mass that he built through that heavy, like again, we say heavy, we're talking about 6 to 8 reps, to like 0 reps in reserve, two sets per session, if that for per exercise.
Mm.
Like and I think a lot of power lifters are training that way now. And obviously when you couple that with the reduction in equipment to where now it's 100% of your muscle is moving this instead of like just leverage and the tension of the equipment, guys are just getting so heavily muscled as a result of doing it, but they have very like dry physiques. And you think about like how they would look, it would be really interesting if it's so tough to do because you have one life, right? And
Yeah.
you have to pick a discipline, you have to pick a lane. But
No
like if you had
redos.
a guy that was a truly elite power lifter that had that like granite hard physique and you took him into bodybuilding and you gave him like much more pump work and he had good genetics, it would be interesting to see that because also I'm seeing a lot of bodybuilders admit this now. Bodybuilders generally like they kind of suck at training in terms of planning their training.
Yes. Yes.
Powerlifters, like they're bodybuilders, they're great at diet. Powerlifters, compared to bodybuilders, are great at training, planning out blocks of training and everything. And I think that might be the next progression. Like if you could get a
Y
guy that is capable of like truly periodizing his training in bodybuilding, that kind of could be a game changer, like where you can manage the fatigue a little bit better. I mean, obviously the genetic outliers will always be at the top, but like
Sure.
I think that that would be really, really interesting. I mean, but unfortunately, to be a great power lifter, you might have to be doing it till you're 40. And then it's like, well, how much time do you have? Like, it's so tough.
Yeah.
You're not going to be a elite Mr. Olympia competitor when you switch sports at age 40. Like, it's just not a thing. So there's not enough time in the day or in your life to do it that way. But I agree, dude. Powerlifting, I always say, I think Dan Green was the guy. Like, Dan Green came along. He was
The
so
trailblazer.
dense, so jacked, a
Yeah.
good looking dude. And it was like, oh, I want to be like him. I don't want to, no
Yeah.
offense, I don't want to look like Dave Hoff.
No.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to look like Dan Green. And that to me was like when the Raw revolution took off. And now that's like you said, that's normal. Now Colton,
Standard.
John Hack, all of these guys look great. They're heavily muscled.
They're
They
healthier.
they're so much more intent with their assistance work too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so many powerlifters back in the day were so out of shape. It's like, I'm going to go ape for 3 to 5 sets of a main movement and then fall asleep while I do curls. Like, no, like now these guys are super disciplined about that stuff.
Yeah. I do think back to your point about like getting periodization into bodybuilding. I think you're right. Bodybuilders are better at diet. They're better at the monotony in a sense, whereas but powerlifters, on the other hand, have to manipulate their nervous system, where bodybuilders do not. So there's really since the high rep, they're always sleeping well, they're always eating well, so the recovery is maxed out for the bodybuilders, whereas the powerlifters, if you train too heavy too long, your body just can't put out the force you're capable of. Your nervous system will not fire and will not give you the throughput that you need to actually lift. Let's say you could lift, 500 pounds on the deadlift. Even though you can do that, if your nervous system is completely exhausted and completely depleted, your body will not allow it. So, on the other hand, bodybuilders, they don't really ever scratch that. They don't really ever come near full nervous system shutdown because they're never training that hard, that heavy, I should say. They're training very hard, but the weights they use, because they're such high rep, high volume, localized fatigue oriented, they don't get the systemic fatigue and the systemic load that a powerlifter does. So, most of the bodybuilders go by feel. Like they have a general amount of sets and reps they're going to do, but if they didn't get the fatigue they really need, they'll keep training until they get it. So it's much more opinion based and feelings based instead of a powerlifter's approach where it's, I did my work at percentages and I'm done for the day and I walk away. Because sometimes with powerlifting, you have to trust the numbers and trust that even though I felt like I could do more, I got to pump the brakes a little bit because I still have 3 weeks of training and then a deload before the contest. So I want to peak now. I want to peak on contest day. So that matters a lot. And it would be very fascinating to blend the disciplines and get the most out of a bodybuilder by giving some sort of periodization. But I'm not sure how I would approach it, how I'd actually, write that out.
It would be very hard. And it's funny you bring that. It's a great point. I remember one of the meets that I pulled like 7 plus, and I'm not saying this was the best way to do it, but it definitely did work. We would push it real hard and then basically like go really, really light for like 9 days before the meet, pretty much 9 or
Yeah.
10 days. And I remember I took like my last warm up in the gym, which is probably 9 or 10 days. I barely locked out a 585 deadlift. Barely.
Yep.
Like, it was dreadful, like, back rounded, looked like shit. 9 days later, I deadlifted 710, 730, whatever it was, like,
Yeah.
crushed it, no problem. And then to your point about kind of blowing your load a little bit, not to be too gross, there was one particular training cycle that I remember I was going through a lot, personally, and I was probably bringing a little bit too much rage into the gym, like, pushing it
Yeah.
too hard.
Yeah.
And I always remember we would do these block pulls off of one DC block per side. If the audience doesn't know what that is, you could look it up. It's like, I don't know, like yay thick. I don't know, like an inch thick, maybe two. I don't remember. And I always found that pulling conventional, my deadlift was worse off of a low elevation than it was off the floor. It was like a
Okay.
weird dead zone where I just didn't have leverage. It felt really, really weird. And I remember I knew like no matter what I hit on the DC block, the one block pull, single block pull, I was always good for like 20 or 30 pounds more off the floor. And I came in, this was about like 6 weeks before the competition, and I pulled 660 for three off of that block, which was like,
Jeez.
I want to say it was like a 730 or 740 projected 1RM for that exercise. And generally, I found that the 1RM calculators for the deadlift worked really, really well for me at 5 reps or less. Anything more
Okay.
than that, and it's a shootout. Generally, three or less. Like a three was like, I could figure it out. And I was like, damn, I could maybe pull 750 in this next competition. Like, because every time that I did that exercise, that relationship was always there. That,
Mm,
and I always found whatever I could pull from a high block pull with a stiff bar was about the same as my deadlift
yeah.
max. Not a
Okay.
deadlift bar where you could just like golden arch it and like it had to be like a real stiff bar. And dude, in that competition, I didn't even deadlift seven.
Really?
I think I did like 695. I was toast. And I remember for the rest of the training cycle, I didn't have it in the deadlift after that one workout. Like it just fucking blew my body apart. Like I didn't have it. Like I went so deep, I just was like I wanted it so bad, and my nervous system was just not the same. And to our point, to bring the conversation full circle, it's like, yeah, I went full retard cowboy.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like, where
It didn't serve you.
if I had done 600 for three, I might have deadlifted 730 or 750 in that
Yeah.
competition.
Yeah.
But instead, I was like, I was had so much personal problems at the time, and I was just trying to prove something to myself and by extension the rest of the world that I could be successful, that I that was one of my more impressive feats of strength, at least for me, you know, my weight and my level of experience. And it cost me what could have been at the time if I had pulled 750 again. We're talking about like 2014 or something, right? So
Yeah.
this is 11 years ago at the 242 weight class, and I was a light 242. That would have been a top five deadlift in the fucking country.
Yeah.
And now I don't have that, right? And it was all because I didn't manipulate the fatigue correctly. I went way, way, way too hard. And there's something to be said, like you said, about nervous system fatigue versus muscle fatigue. Like it takes so much out of you to get up for a big lift. And people get this twisted. Like, oh, I deadlift 315, and so like, and I could max out every week. Yeah, but sure, your max is 315 and someone else's is 800, but 800 is not 315. At some
Yeah.
point, it's just more expensive for your body to do this. And you think about like to put 500 pounds on your deadlift, the average person, you're not gaining 500 pounds of mass.
No.
Meaning
It's not
the
one-to-one ratio.
exactly. The meaning that the force output is coming from a bigger frame than the guy that pulls 315, sure, but not that much bigger to make it easy to recover from.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, if you're 1,000 pounds and you're deadlifting 800, sure, like whatever, but that's not the way that it works. Like, you know, especially if you're in powerlifting and it's a weight class sport, you know, you want to stay at your weight class for as long as possible. So maybe you're not eating as much, or you're cutting weight, or you're not doing as much hypertrophy work. So it gets to the point where, okay, I put on 20 pounds of muscle. I put 300 pounds on my deadlift, which is like quite literally was my powerlifting journey. 20 pounds of muscle, 300 pounds on my deadlift.
Yeah.
That is expensive for your body to put that out. That is like, it's like shooting an elephant gun. Like, how many shots do you have before you got to put the gun, your shoulder's fucked?
Yeah.
Whereas the
Yeah.
opposite is I'm shooting a 22. Like, great, yeah, you deadlift 225. You could do it all fucking day. You could max out, but you're shooting a 22. It's not the same thing as going ape. And I always wondered from the strongman perspective, like, what events take the most out of you in a similar way?
Um, that's interesting. It's a good question. I would say it probably varies athlete to athlete, but I never felt worse after like a truck pull or a plane or not plane. We didn't do plane pulls. We did like fire engine pulls, that kind of thing at the contest that I was at on the amateur level. So I would say the truck pull was the most taxing for me. I don't know if it was probably because it was more cardiovascular, not from a nervous system perspective. If I had to, kind of look back on it, rep deadlifts, like deadlift for reps, probably one of the most taxing because the weight is fixed, so it's an approximate for that weight class. Some guys get 25 reps, and you're grinding for 8 to 10. So it's quite humbling when you see somebody just treat it like a styrofoam weight. But I would say anything deadlift, anything that's very heavily posterior chain oriented, like stones for reps, stone carries. A lot of the carries really, really screw with me, like a front loaded carry, whether it's a stone or a sandbag or like a keg or a barrel. Anything axial loaded, so any shoulder carry, like, yoke carries, because you
That
can
would have been
carry
my
so much
guess.
more weight.
I would have
Yeah,
said, I'm thinking about it from what I know, like a heavy yoke carry, not like for speed or something, but like a
yeah,
heavy, heavy yoke carry. I think about that and I'm like, fuck, because
yeah,
like, and you have to be acclimated to it. Like, I always found when we were getting ready for competitions, like that first week, it was usually about 6 weeks out from the meet that I put knee wraps on. So now I could handle maybe 100 pounds more on the
sure.
squat. I would eat shit. I would miss a squat every single time because the weight felt like a truck on my
Yeah,
back, like a
yeah,
truck. And then 6 weeks later, that's like your last warm up. You know
yeah,
what I mean? But
right?
like it just that feeling of like you get something on your back and you're like, holy shit, like how am I going to do this? The yoke to me, like seeing you guys train it, that was what I always felt was like, okay, that's crushing in terms of fatigue. Like you said, like an axial load on your back. It's got to be so demanding. You're doing 800 pounds or something like, oh God, it's just horrifying.
I know I did that, and I didn't recover for, probably weeks. I wasn't back to my full potential for weeks. Before nationals, I competed at 2014 amateur strongman nationals at the 231-pound weight class in Reno, Nevada. So that was a whole adventure. I'll tell that story a different day. But the contest yoke was 750. So my coach's theory was to train heavier in training to prepare for a contest yoke. So I did 800 for 80 feet, which is my best ever yoke carry, for weight and for distance combined. And it really, I performed okay. And funny enough, the yoke was probably my best event in the contest, which was always my worst event in training. But like you said, I prepared my nervous system for it and my bones and all my connective tissue for that stress. Whereas I tried to yoke, within recent years when I haven't been in the game, and like 400 pounds, I'm like, oh, it was so achy. And so, even though I'm not that much weaker than I used to be, my body is just not prepared for that kind of stress. And it's incredible what your nervous system, how it can change in a matter of 5 to 10 days. Like you said, like you're at contest, you're deadlifting 600 or 700 pounds plus, and then you can't hit 585 a week later. Like you're not weaker. Like nothing has changed with your muscles. Not enough time, unless you were starving for all 7 days post contest. Nothing. You haven't atrophied. You have not lost muscle tissue. Your connective tissue is still as prepared as it used to be. Your bones are just as dense as they were. But now your nervous system, that one variable can make or break your strength progress. That's why it's really important, I think, for a lot of people not to be the cowboy for much of their training, right? Just to be reserved, be okay, like, be the cowboy in the sense that you fucking manhandle what percentages you're actually handling. If it's 75, if it's 80, doesn't matter if it's fast. Being so tense and aggressive is going to help you because mechanically and, you know, you want to kind of fire up the nerves and your nervous system to be able to move weight aggressively. You don't always want to move so slow, but for the most part, you're going to have to keep the cowboy in check, right? Keep the cowboy on a leash, so to speak, so it doesn't fuck up your training long term, or again, like you said, blow your load too quick earlier into the contest, and it means just like give all your energy and effort too early when the timing isn't right. Because a lot of powerlifting is timing, and if you can get that, that's why the best Thor for the most part, he's a master of peaking, right?
It's a great
A
point.
week later, he might not be able to deadlift the same weight, but it doesn't matter. He did it. on the contest day. And I
Yeah.
think that's,
I
it
wanna kinda close this out with this. I think that's a great point, is we the last show or 2 shows ago, we spoke about, like, "Hey, don't pick what the elite guys are doing now. Pick, train like maybe what they did to get there, assuming that the training makes sense, right?" But
okay.
your point about peaking, that's another thing that people lose sight of. So I'll use bodybuilding as an example, but obviously this is true of Hafthor or anyone who's kind of doing what he's doing. Like, if you're an elite bodybuilder, I'll think of like Jay Cutler is a perfect example because he's been very open about his training and like very analytical, very honest. Like, these guys don't necessarily lift very aggressive weights in the gym at that level. Now, it's not because they're pussies. It's first of all, the risk reward is not there. Like,
Sure.
if you're trying to bench 500 on the incline, the injury risk is insane. And as we've
Yes.
discussed, tearing a pec in bodybuilding, that's your career. Once you're
It's over.
physically maimed, it's over. Like
Over.
it's going to be so tough to come back from. Now, sometimes when you're that heavily muscled and you're that elite, okay, it it's more about, can you just peak properly as opposed to, did you improve year over year,
Yeah.
right? Like, you could
Yes.
be an Olympia level bodybuilder, okay, and not peak well and finish 10th, okay, or peak perfectly. Like, Jay Cutler in 2009 brought, I would say, his best physique. He was lean,
Okay.
dry. It's the famous quad stomp photo. He's got the spiked hair. I mean,
Sure.
it's iconic. It's iconic.
Iconic.
But he basically said, he was like, I just peaked perfectly. Where the previous year, he lost the Olympia, and everyone kind of thought he was done because he was still, I think he was in his 30s. He'd been chasing Ronnie at that point for 7 years. Okay. He wins 2 Olympias in a row. One of them, some people thought it was questionable over Victor Martinez. He loses to Dexter Jackson, who was a master of peaking. Dexter
Okay.
was always shredded, always. Dexter Jackson was the kind of guy that the judges would give it to if the masked monsters looked soft, because he
Okay.
was always tight. Like, it was like, well, how? Okay, this guy's fucking bloated, and then Dexter is, his nickname was literally the Blade. I mean, like completely shredded.
So
He's
cut.
always the guy that's going to take it from you if you're not perfect, because he's always perfect. So if you've already built up this incredible strength, this incredible mass, and you know in your head that you're capable of deadlifting the weights that Thor is deadlifting, it's like, okay, it's maybe at that point it's not about getting stronger, it's about how much of this can I express in a competition setting.
Yes.
And like,
Precisely.
it's not that when you're lower level, it's about just improving, right? And like, okay, I have to improve, but when you're, I think Jay Cutler's what, like, he's probably 5'9", and you're stepping on stage at, like, I don't know, 270 or whatever, 265,
Yeah.
shredded, 3%
Yeah.
body fat, freakish muscle mass. Like, does he really need to put on an additional 10 pounds of mass in the off season? Because on top of that, you're worried about symmetry, right? Like,
Sure.
okay, if my arms grow but my shoulders don't, now it throws the whole thing out of whack. So once you've achieved the symmetry and you have about as much mass as you can put on, it's kind of fundamentally about, what package am I going to bring on game day, right?
Yes.
And that's a great point about Thor. He's so good at just getting the most out of his body that day. Now, I'm sure he wants to get stronger, but this could very well be a Milanichev situation where he knows his body. Maybe he could fucking deadlift, I don't know, I'm gonna make up some crazy number, like 550 in terms of kilos or something. Who the hell knows? Whatever it is, he
Yeah.
knows it. I know based on my numbers that I can do this. I just got to keep bringing it and keep bringing it.
Yep.
And that's and,
And
and
stay
that's
measured.
the difference at the top level, versus guys who were more bottom level. It's like, you could only improve your body so much before investing in that improvement gives you diminished returns. So then at that
Yes.
point, it's all about, how can I just bring the best package? How can I take what I already have and display it better on game day? And like I think that's just a great point. Like, it's the same thing with high level guys in jujitsu. Like, yes, you want to improve your skill set, but at some point, if this is actually more true of wrestling. Like, the reason why wrestlers a lot of times become psychotic knockout artists in MMA is because they have not learned something new in the wrestling room for 10 years.
Hmm.
Because once they figure their game out, it's just get really good at scoring with your game. So you're not
Okay.
learning like new stuff. It's like my move is the single leg takedown. That's what we do a fucking 1,000 times a day, single leg. So when they can do something else, sometimes you see them get away from what they're good at because they're just so happy to be stimulated by new shit. But a lot of times in wrestling, it's just, can I bring the best package that day? Can I, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Is my weight cut under control? And little things like,
Yeah.
am I going to be in the right side of the bracket? Even like, if there's some guy who's a matchup problem for me, and but that guy can't win the tournament. He can just beat me. So is someone else going to take him out before I run into him? And it
Oh,
becomes
okay.
a
Yeah.
like
Just luck
that's
of
a
the
big
draw.
thing for tournament style. Like you get a guy that's a problem for you. You hope someone else takes him out because maybe he's only the number 10 guy only, and you're the number one guy, but he can beat you. So it's a strange thing, but at a top level, it's so much about just refining, refining, refining. Where beginner and intermediate, it's about improving, improving, improving. And those are two totally different things.
Yes. I think the improving for beginner intermediate, you can do so many different things to improve. Like you don't have to be so precise and laser focused. And what took Thor to 800-pound deadlift did not take him to over 1,000. So he probably had to change his approach quite a bit to continue. You don't just, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That adage works sometimes, but to get to, for a lot of these strongmen who are that big and that strong to begin with, to get to 800 is like that's like an industry standard. They have to be able to deadlift 8
Yep.
for reps. That's just kind of like what you need to be on the platform. But to get you from 800 to 1,000 and then 1,000 to 1,100, as you know, when you're at that high heavy weight, adding 10 pounds is a mountain. Adding 10 pounds feels like the weight of the world. It's not like, oh, it's just 10 pounds more. I'm sure you can do it. Not really. So you have to change your approach dramatically sometimes and step outside your comfort zone and try new things. And that's why it helps to have coaching, because if you're just beating a dead horse and you're not making progress, it's probably because you've outgrown that approach. You need to change something and get something to continue to push your progress forward. There's a really great quote actually for like the contest day theme. I think practicing contest day, meaning competing more often, really helps you get better at this. But Zig Ziglar is like a sales guy, motivational speaker. He's got a lot of great content, from years ago. But he has a great quote. Is like when you're really nervous about something, you get the quote unquote butterflies, right? You get the butterflies in your stomach. And some people that makes or breaks your effort. Some people that sensation of being nervous takes over and they can't perform. And some people rise to the occasion and it gives them the ability to perform at their best. So Zig Ziglar put it, everyone's going to get the butterflies, but can you get them to fly in formation? Like, can you control that sensation and can you harness it to make you more alert, better, more energetic, whatever your discipline needs, whether it's sales or it's a strength athlete, can you harness that? And I felt I was always bad on contest day and I didn't compete that frequently because strongman is a very devastating sport. You can't compete every weekend. Whereas like grappling, you might be able to compete, weekly if you had to, because there's not so much wear and tear there. So I find it really interesting that even with adaptations you get and all that, I was always better in training than I was on the platform or on contest day, in my opinion. And I do think it has to do for me with I wasn't able to harness, the excitement and the butterflies and all that nervous energy to a positive result. I would kind of level out and not exceed my training for the most part.
It's funny. I'm not saying that jujitsu is the most stressful thing in the world. It's not, but I didn't play any sports in high school at all. Okay. And the first sport I competed in, not the first, but I hadn't competed in a sport maybe for 6 or 7 years until I got into jujitsu when I was 19. Right. And so my reemergence into competition was one-on-one combat sports. And it was
Okay.
very, very challenging for me. And so because of that, when I took time off from jujitsu and went to powerlifting, I thought it was so easy. Like, I
Uh,
absolutely felt like I got the most out of myself in powerlifting competition. Like, obviously, you have to have the T's crossed and the I's dotted in training, and sometimes I would obliterate myself in the gym and not bring the best performance. But I always felt like meet day, like that was my day. Like because to me it just felt so easy. Like no one's trying to hurt me. I wasn't facing another person. I that can be intimidating. You're worried, what's this guy thinking? Is he like I never viewed it that way. And I don't I remember Travis Mash telling me one time the the day that he started to progress being a world champion was when he reduced powerlifting to all I'm doing is lifting weights in front of my friends. And once he looked at it that way, he was like, "Oh, fuck it. Like, whatever. Like that's all that matters." So I always felt like I got the absolute most. I always felt like in powerlifting, I think I always rose to the occasion. And a lot of times, if when I prepared properly, my lifts in competition always exceeded what I did in the gym.
Okay.
Assuming again that I didn't make the mistakes that I had said that I made before, but if it was possible to get it, generally speaking, I was going to get it, and I love that, and I'm very proud of that. But again, it was just to me, it just felt easier than combat sports. So like
Yeah,
that was kind of
I
my
get that.
frame of reference. But dude, to your credit, it's also such a predictable sport. Like in powerlifting, you as the competitor control so much. Like,
Yes.
you control the rack height. You control whether or not it's in or out on the monolift. Okay. In some cases, some competitions, and I'm totally against this, by the way, they let you use your own fucking spotters. Okay, which is crazy. Like, I'm sorry that
Yeah.
that shouldn't be unless there's no spotters and everyone's going to die. Like, that should not be allowed. Okay, like
Yeah.
and the only lift, I've said this, that I struggled with in competition relative to my training was the bench press, because every bench is different. The
Yep.
height of the bench
The
off the
equipment
floor,
changes.
the thickness of the pad. Like, I don't have control of that, but in general, like, I tell you the weight to put on the bar. Most competitions had good barbells. So it
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
like I was going from lifting with really great stuff and then going to a meet and lifting with lower quality stuff. And if anything, it was better quality. So it's you're so much under your control that there's almost no need to be nervous. Whereas in your situation, like, everything is different. The dimensions of the yoke can be different, right? You don't
Yeah.
have the time to warm up. Like in powerlifting, you have all day to warm up.
Yeah.
Like you have multiple flights. You're doing the same warm up you do in the gym. Whereas in strongman, it's like you have 10 minutes. Go now. You have to deadlift fucking 500 for 25. Like you don't. But there's
Yeah.
no bar laying around in some of these competitions where you could warm up and get into your headspace. So you have
It's
to
true.
really learn to flip the switch. Where for me, it was always like, all right, I'm going to go warm up on the bench. I'm going to do the exact same warm ups I do in the gym. Okay. And guess what? Like, those warm ups feel the same. So I know what I'm going to be able to hit. And,
Yeah.
and that's it. The only other thing would be, again, on the bench press, not every judge has the same press command, right? Some
True.
guys practically
Some
call it
guys make
touch
you
and
wait.
go. Other guys will like murder you with like a 2 or 3 second
Oh, yeah.
pause.
You'll
And
fall asleep back there.
obviously, like, there's no way to know until you get there. It's completely, it sometimes even a faster count will screw you up because you're so used to a certain type of cadence.
Yep.
But otherwise, I mean, dude, you're deadlifting. You just bend down and fucking pick it up.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's the weight you told them to put on the bar.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's
Like,
true. Yeah.
that's it.
I always felt like I played football throughout middle school and high school, and one thing I've found parallel with that, yeah, you're saying having a human adversary really does heighten the anxiety, I
Oh,
think.
yeah, dude.
But after that, so I always said in football, you have the butterflies on the bus, you have the butterflies when you're warming up and you're doing your drills. After that first crack, after that first, helmet to helmet collision, whether it's your brain trauma or not, the butterflies go away,
Yeah.
right? So you don't really, after that's over, like he's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And you kind of like, now you're in it. Now
Yeah.
you're just like focused and you're kind of playing the game. I found that with strongman, my first event was always the worst. So my first opening event, because I had all the butterflies and those nerves, that jitters, nervous energy, I always felt my first event was the worst, and then events that came on later, and by stones, usually the fifth and final event, I was very comfortable in the environment and with the atmosphere and the pressure and the eyes on you. Because in powerlifting, not so much strongman, but powerlifting, when you're lifting, you're the only one in the building
Yeah.
lifting.
Yeah.
And all
That's
the
true.
audience and all the other lifters, everyone's looking at you. So there's like a certain almost stage fright you can get as well. Besides, so I think boiling it down, like you said, with a Travis Mash, boiling it down to I'm just in front of my friends. Like that's a cool way to think about it. And if you can actually make yourself believe it and let that take over your psyche, you'll probably have a much better result.
And also in powerlifting, look, like, you get 3 attempts, okay?
Yeah.
So, like, I like being on stage, I like being the center of attention. I'm more comfortable with it now than I was back then, but inherently, that's always something that I've liked. But just open light on your squat.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, if you know, if you have confidence in yourself, you pick a weight that you can do 5 times, okay?
Yeah.
That you could get so far out of position with that you'll lift it, then you're good. And then
Yeah.
take a big jump and then take another whatever, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So
Sure.
you also have the ability to go out there and be like, all right, like I'm trying to squat, I don't know, 600 today or something. Like I'll open at 5 because I'm so fucking nervous. Maybe not the
Yeah.
best tactical decision. You know what I mean?
True.
Like
True.
maybe it's going to
Yeah.
be tough. You have to go from 5 to 585 and then take a small jump. Okay, maybe not the best decision, but you get in the meet. You know you're not going to bomb out, which is humiliating. Okay,
Yeah.
and on top of that, you get a feel for the monolift. You get a feel for the judges. You get a feel for like where the depth is going to be. Now you know, like maybe you go to your normal depth and you get red lighted. Well,
Yeah.
now you know you got to sink it deeper, which means that you're going to have to change the weights that you put on there. But you get that first attempt, and that's a huge difference versus strongman, where it's like, all right, go. This is your only chance.
Yeah.
Like it's,
And
you don't get
you have
to
no
warm
warm
up
ups
and
for the
be like,
most
let me
part in
get a feel
amateur.
for the stones. And no, dude, it's like it's your turn, go. And that's hard. Like that would make me nervous because you train
Yeah.
so hard and you don't have that much time. Like if you make a mistake, it's a wrap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You really don't touch the stones at all in amateur contest, I'm talking about. In professional, it's a little bit better from what I've heard, but they still are it's very haphazard and it's a lot of rushed situations where you're waiting very long after you warm up, so you're almost cold again, like you're not even prepared anymore for the event. But in amateur strongman, maybe things have come along since I've been doing it because it's been quite a while since I've been in the game. But usually it's like one bar that people are just throwing weights onto. There's no organization to the warm up. So maybe you take 2 reps of something of the implement at like half of your contest weight. So you're just relying on your resolve and your brute force to get through those first couple of reps because it's just not you're not prepared as you would be in training. In training, I take the empty bar. I take 95 pounds, 135, 185, 225, and you can really prepare yourself in the best case scenario. I think that's a big part of the reason why Eddie Hall was disputing Thor's first world record
Yeah.
deadlift because he did it in his own home turf. He did it on his own time. Like there wasn't the really significant delays between attempts that there are in contests, which really matters. It matters. If you're waiting 20 minutes between deadlift attempts because you have 10 other guys going, that can really throw you off. So when you're in the comfort of your own gym with your own crew, you're probably going to perform the best you ever
Dude,
would.
I'll leave you with this. That
Yeah,
is how I tore my lat at my first competition.
really.
Yeah, I will never forget it. It was in May in like this, it was almost like an auditorium setting because it was actually on a stage. It wasn't like at a gym that they kind of cleared out. It was on a physical stage. And I was out in Suffolk County, New York. I was so nervous, my first ever powerlifting meet. Uh, we get to the deadlifts, and I'm like, all right, maybe I'm gonna have something respectable here, just a really small local meet. And they added in a kids division for the deadlift, and they put it in the same flight. So there was like 15 kids added to the division, and these kids are lifting 65 pounds,
Yeah,
95 pounds, right? And I remember they opened the doors. So it was May, it was like a Sunday night or something, or Saturday. It was still pretty cool out. So the temperature in the gym dropped substantially, right? And then they added in all these kids. And then of course, the amount of weight they have to put on the bar when you get to the adults it's substantial time. It's not like you're
yeah,
going from 585 to 7. It's only a small adjustment or something. So, and then of course for the third attempt for the kids or whatever, you have to take all the fucking weight off and then put it back on. And I remember I warmed up. Again, it was a local meet, so even though it was my first meet, I was like the one of the last guys to deadlift. It's an ascending bar, obviously, so like the stronger people go last. And yeah, I felt a tear right through my lat on my first attempt. And
yeah.
like the next day, I was just like purple from my lat all the way down to my elbow, and I was ice cold. And so, to your point, that is the only relevant criticism of Hafthor breaking the record in his own house, which is you just have so much control of the environment.
Yes.
So much control. Like
The
that
timing.
one little thing, like gave me a serious injury, and then ironically, I tore my other lat a couple years later, probably from the compensatory effect of what was going on in my body, right? So, like you said, you don't have any control over it. And I've done meets where, you know, let's say I'm resting 10 minutes between sets in the gym because we have a bunch of hooligans or something. And now maybe it's a really big flight and you're resting 20 minutes between sets in competition.
Yeah.
Conversely, I've seen times where the meet is really small and there might only be 8 guys in your flight. That's not a lot of rest for a big
Not at
squatter,
all.
right?
Not at
And
all.
so now it's like I'm not even conditioned. Like I'm not even ready. I have to come down, get these fucking knee wraps off me so I can feel
Yeah.
my feet again. Then, oh, before I know it, I got to get. It's really really hard. So
Yeah.
like 100%, man. Competition. It's the environment change in and of itself. Like even when I travel and I go to a different jujitsu gym, I get butterflies. You're
Yeah.
rolling with people
Yeah.
that listen, I've trained with great people. Most gyms are not as good as the places that I've been fortunate enough to train. And I know that, but still, the air conditioning is turned off. I mean, these things matter, okay?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
someone you don't know, like it fucks with you. So you're right. Getting used to that mindset is super, super important. And to kind of bring this full circle, that's when you need the cowboy.
Yeah. When you can flip that switch and turn the cowboy on when you need him.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
All right, my
That's
man.
yeah.
I think we're good for today. How about you?
Hell yeah. I agree. It was a great day.
This has been a
Great
great
day as
show.
always.
Everyone, this is the Iron Road signing off.